Hey guys, Matt here. So I've been talking about this in passing over the last couple of portfolio updates, but I kind of want to make a video in which I talk about these two stocks, AT&T and Verizon, more at length, because I think this is a very interesting time of year, a very interesting chain of events, in which that everyone is selling the stocks. Everyone is selling the stock. I mean, ever since the beginning of this year, like AT&T has been on a downward slope. You talking Verizon? Much the same way. Now AT&T is a lot more dramatic about it. We'll talk about that later. But Verizon been hit the same way. We got T-Mobile stock been down. Down year to date. Now they did have a bit of a run up in the first half of the year, but that run up has long since passed. And believe me, I am feeling the pain myself. With AT&T, I'm down 12.71%. Now, that's average. I mean, on some of my earlier shares, I'm down as far as 5%. No, it gets worse than that. We're talking 20% on some of my earliest shares. And if we go down to Verizon, like, we're talking, let's say, at the worst, we're talking maybe 6%, 10% at the very, very worst. Yeah, so I'm not looking too good on either of these stocks. And in this video, I want to go over why I'm pretty much doing the opposite of that. I am not selling AT&T Verizon, and as a matter of fact, I am buying more, and buying more pretty heavy. And yes, I know the whole typical, yeah, we're long-term investors, we buy and hold, we don't care about short-term price fluctuations. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard that over and over again by a bunch of different YouTubers. And by itself, yes, that's good advice, but people also use that as an excuse to do stupid shit. So I'm going to give you a little bit more than that. Now, let's start with Verizon. Now, when I usually do these videos in passing, talking about these stocks, I usually focus on AT&T, but I want to start with Verizon this time, mainly because, I mean, this is purely anecdotal, but I'm a Verizon customer, and I've been a customer for about 15 years, and I'm very happy with the company, but on to the things that actually matter. Like, you would think that with the 11% price drop over the year, you think that Verizon was performing like shit, and they're really not. Like, I mean, from our operating revenues, they're up this year. We're talking operating income up this year for the 3 months and the 9 months. Bottom line up. I mean, 9 months, bottom line for the 3 months also up. Like, they're doing really, really well across the board. Now, one thing that a lot of people say, and I've read this in the news, is that Verizon is a boring stock, and that's true, but sometimes I like boring. Not every stock has to be a 5x or a 10x and stuff like that. If you're looking for a growth stock in Verizon or AT&T, you're probably looking at the wrong place. I mean, I wouldn't recommend those stocks at all if you're looking for a 10xer. Like, Verizon and AT&T, in my opinion, are more value/dividend stocks, with a little bit of emphasis, depending on how they're performing, on the value side of it. And Verizon is doing very well as far as their top line and their bottom line. Now, as far as assets, now their assets are doing really, really well, as you can see here. One of the biggest problems I have with Verizon and AT&T, and I think this is shared amongst at least a couple of y'all, is that they have debt. Like, they have a lot of debt, and despite them saying that they're taking care of their debt, I mean, their debt is going up. Now, a lot of that additional debt was for good reason. Earlier this year, both AT&T and Verizon were bidding for some extra 5G spectrum and stuff like that. I'll just keep it very simple. And Verizon came in first, AT&T came in second, and so that debt spent was for a good purpose, and that Verizon and AT&T could potentially have the best or second best, respectively, 5G networks in the country. So hopefully they're going to be paying that down throughout 2022. Now, Verizon and AT&T are pretty much going through the same things this year, which is why I talk about the two stocks together. I mean, yeah, they're two different companies, but they're going through a lot of the same shit. Now, we know that AT&T is a lot more dramatic about it, and that AT&T is spinning off Warner Media, which is a big thing. But Verizon is also doing the same thing in order to streamline this business to become purely, cellular, wireless, and internet. Verizon has recently spun off as Verizon Media. Now, that's mainly known for Yahoo and AOL. Verizon spun it off, and that concluded September of this year. So we'll see what we'll see how that impacts both their assets, their debt, and all that, starting next quarter, I think, and through the quarters after that. But I am actually really excited to see what happens with Verizon going forward now that, Verizon has streamlined itself. Now, Verizon did make an acquisition. Now, this is off of their latest 10Q, Trace Phone Wireless. Now, I am at least happy that this acquisition is in line with their current business model. I mean, Verizon does wireless and cellular, and this seems pretty much in line with Verizon's existing business model. So I'm not too mad about that. And just as an update to their 10Q, Verizon did complete that transaction as of the 23rd. So yeah, there's a sell-off, but I see no reason why I should join in on that. Verizon is doing very well and has been doing very well over the past couple years. If we take a look at its statistics, the valuation stuff, because they do matter, like, I don't see anything wrong with their valuations. They look very, very nice, especially their forward PE. Hey guys, Editing Matt here. So one thing I do want to point out is that I had a whole clip in which I used Yahoo Finance to show you the payout ratio for both dividend and AT&T. But if you ever use Yahoo Finance for these stocks, you know that the information gets a little skewed because sometimes they go off of net income, whereas AT&T and Verizon use free cash flow to calculate their payout ratio. But anyways, for Verizon, we got 47.6 payout ratio and a 2.1% 5-year growth rate. AT&T is supporting a 61.5% payout ratio, which is still good, and only supporting a 5-year growth rate, which we know is going to go down when they slash their dividend next year. Now, taking a look at the analyst estimates, starting with the revenue, yeah, they're expected to go up in revenue this year compared to last year, which is good. They're going to go down next year, but that's expected since Verizon is selling all parts of his business. That's to be expected. Despite that, we got EPS going up quite a bit. Well, quite a bit for a value, for a value stock, 4.9 to 5.3, and then moderately up next year. These are just estimates. I mean, they could easily change over time. Now, let's take a look at AT&T's latest 10Q. Now, you can see they did drop off on their top line from a 3 months and 9 months perspective, and that is to be expected since, AT&T is shedding off parts of his business. That's not a surprise to anyone who's been following AT&T. But take a look at this. Despite them being down on the top line, so despite this, their operating income is up on their middle line, and their net income is up quite a bit from both a 3 months and a 9 months perspective. So that signals to me that what AT&T is doing, trying to revitalize itself, it is working. We are seeing some of the fruits of what AT&T is going through. Now, as far as their assets, yeah, their assets are getting better. Their debt, now we've already talked about this with Verizon, their debt is going up. Now, the Warner Media spinoff, once that concludes in the middle of next year, that is supposed to help that. And let's talk about the Warner Media thing for a bit right now. Now, AT&T has much more of a dramatic drop-off than Verizon and T-Mobile. And now, although we're talking bullish about both of these stocks, this is not a to the moon channel. We don't just spend our times, pretending these companies do no wrong. Like, a lot of the drop-off that AT&T has had this year, I think is AT&T's own fault. AT&T, as far as us, that was a pretty dramatic announcement AT&T made. It was just when the stock was reaching its high. I think this might be the moment. And not only did AT&T, announced that it was spinning off as Warner Media, which is a very profitable, just check out the news. Like, it's a very profitable acquisition. Like, I can understand what AT&T is trying to do. I understand their vision, and, they want to also slim down, just like Verizon is, in becoming straight, wireless, cellular, and internet. But, that sudden announcement right when it happened, yeah, that kicked a lot of investors in teeth. And there are a lot of people in my videos about AT&T who don't like the stock, and I honestly don't have a retort against it. You have my full respect if you don't like AT&T. Like, what they did, and they're also slashing their dividend, which, if you're into AT&T strictly for the dividends, yeah, that's another kick in the teeth. That really sucks. And if you sold out of AT&T, you have my full respect, absolutely. And honestly, I thought about selling myself, and maybe I should have. However, and think about it, I mean, I do believe in the long-term vision of what AT&T is trying to accomplish. And I think as a cellular and as a, internet provider, I think that AT&T is going to continue to do well. And I think that selling off Warner Media, while it may or may not be a mistake, it will help AT&T. Instead of maybe having the biggest dividend in the world, it'll be a safer dividend as long as AT&T continues to perform after that. As long as AT&T actually uses the proceeds to pay down debt, and we do see some results from what AT&T is doing. So what are my plans with these two stocks? So this is Verizon over the past 5 years, and you can see that it has not gotten above roughly $60, 60, 61 bucks. I don't expect, now I'll be happy to be proven wrong, I don't expect Verizon to go above $60. And if I was a growth investor, that would be a bad thing, but I'm not. Let's take a look at T-Stock over the past 5 years. Now, if you've been invested in T-Stock, AT&T, yeah, I can see why you're mad and you may not want to invest again. However, I invested right around here. So this is my cost basis right around here. So I'm happy here. Now, even then, I'll be happy if AT&T ever hits 35 over the next 3 to 5 years. And if I was a growth investor, that would be a huge problem. With AT&T, my cost basis is $27.74. With Verizon, my cost basis is $53.82. My plan is simple. Now, I will be focusing on Verizon simply because it is a much more, in my opinion, stable stock. AT&T is a little bit more dramatic, in my opinion. And I already have enough invested. Although I will continue to trickle money into AT&T, I will be focusing more on Verizon. I like to get these two stocks up to, maybe $8,000, maybe a little more. And so I'll be putting in a regular amount of money each week into Verizon as long as this stock trades below my cost basis. And the whole thing of a value/dividend stock, in my opinion, is that I will do that until my cost basis is met. And once the stock trades above it, I will stop. The same with AT&T. I will keep nibbling off shares here and there until it gets above my cost basis, assuming it ever does. And once it does, I will stop buying AT&T and hold and let the dividends, do the work for me. And in the meantime now, this is obviously going to change after the Warner Media spinoff, but until then, I mean, I'm very happy sitting back and collecting my 8.5%. Now, yes, that is overshadowed by the 12% loss, but I mean, unless I sell, it's not really a loss. Well, unless the stock price never recovers, in which case that's a different story. But yeah, I'm happy, taking 8.5% while I hold, wait for the Warner Media thing to happen, wait for a few quarters after that, and then go from there. And with Verizon, once the spinoff happened with Warner Media, I will probably take my shares from Warner Media and put them back into AT&T, just because I just want to have all my money there. And with Verizon, I mean, I'm down 3.7%, but I mean, I'm making 4.9% just to hold the stock in the meantime. And Verizon, as far as we know, they're not slashing their dividend. So yeah, Wall Street keeps selling their shares, and I'll keep buying. But anyways, take care, have a great day, and eat your vegetables.